Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pixel Judge interview. Today I'm talking with Sanya Weathers. I hope I got your name right because it isn't unusual.
Did actually. It's Sanya.
When I was Googling you, actually, I kept coming up with weather reports, which was interesting. It made it a little bit more difficult to find out exactly who you were and stuff. But, I
If you Google
suppose,
my original professional name, the my maiden name,
hmm,
you get me, and you also get a champion eater. There was a girl named Sanya Thomas who could eat enormous amounts of hot dogs in one sitting, and that was what you get. And my players used to send me bits of whatever she had just eaten, and the worst was the time she won a hard-boiled egg competition.
oh.
I've off topic already, and we've just barely begun. That's
Well,
upsetting.
it's
I'm
my
gonna
own fault
stop
for bringing that
talking.
up. I was going to mention, with your surname, you should have a typhoon named after you. Yeah, that'd be quite the accomplishment, that wouldn't it? Like everybody
It's
else, well, what
just
did you do this weekend? Oh, I went to
I
saw family.
laid
I went to
waste
stuff.
to a
What did you do this
civilization.
weekend? I destroyed a city.
Coincidentally, my boss calls me Hurricane Sanya. We're getting on topic by accident.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Anyway, since it's a good place to start, so you already started. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm the director of community for Undead Labs. Uh, we make a game called State of Decay, and we're dreaming of a game called Class 4. That's a massive open world concept survival zombie apocalypse survival game. But right now we're out on XBLA and Steam, and I spend my days talking about it with players. I serve as the conduit of information from the
Such a
dev team to the
hard
players.
life, isn't it?
It's horrible. Oh my gosh, it's awful. I have to spend all day hanging out with the people that I would be friends with if I weren't representing a game, and I usually do get to be friends with them over time. I spend it talking about games with players, and when I'm not talking about it with players, I'm talking about it with the developers. It is the greatest job in the history of mankind.
I can imagine.
I've been doing it since it has its moments,
Well,
but
I checked your LinkedIn. It was like 12, 13 years you've been at it now, something like that,
yeah,
on and
yeah.
off.
I started professionally in 2001, but I got my first game job. I was a volunteer CSR. I did customer service, and I did live events. I was just telling someone earlier. One of my favorite memories is I was a werewolf running around a zone just chomping on newbies, doing really unseemly emotes to them. But there was role play involved as well. If they didn't just try to kill me first thing, which is what one normally does when
Hmm.
one is faced with a slavering werewolf. But if you didn't just try to kill me right off, I wouldn't kill you. If you offered me a dog treat, I would do whatever you said to do. It
Running
was great fun.
around, playing games, all whacked on a Scooby snack.
Basically, yes. It was marvelous.
Speaking of
And
emotes, I used to go up and give Darth Vader a hug every time I saw him on Star Wars Galaxies.
and why not? Does not evil need love as well?
In fact, we had this. A bunch of us used to get together whenever we saw him turn up. He was usually on Coruscant for some reason. Coruscant or Naboo. But we'd all kind of get together and have this competition to see who could perform the most emotes before he force choked us to death. Because the thing is, anything you did at him, anything at all, you could salute him and he'd force choke you. So we'd just have it
Jeez.
kind of laid up, see how many we could get out before he killed us. I got to like 4 or 5, and most of them were hugs, and I blew a kiss at him as I was dying. So I was quite pleased with myself for that.
That's the stuff that games are made of, and
Definitely.
that's why actually I got hired is because I my background is all MMOs, and since that's the future dream, they thought they'd get an MMO person in
Does make a
early.
lot of sense in a lot of ways. Persistent online experience, as they say.
It's a different breed. Although I have to say I have I have fallen madly in love with console players. It's the community. Maybe it's just the game. I don't know, but the community's amazing. Everyone they apologize when they're wrong.
It is getting to that point. I think it's
I,
because consoles online, at least, were very much a new thing. It wasn't until the original Xbox that the idea came about. Even though the Dreamcast did it first, it was the Xbox that made people realize you could actually do it on a console. So it's still very much in its infancy.
mm,
I mean, going online with them, what realistically we're looking at 10 years at the
yeah,
very most before it is from when it became a standard, and even then, it's only in the last 5 or 6 that it became a major player. The PC crowd have always been online and have found their own little niches and formed their own little groups. So they've become quite insular in a lot of ways.
But the console people have such a terrible reputation. If you look in the wider media, the depictions of the trash talking and the toxic environments, I'm not saying that that doesn't exist. I'm saying my own personal experience with this community has been nothing but the nicest, most helpful. I mean, we have occasional trolls, but even
Of
they're
course.
mostly just funny.
Well, it's the
Got an
same with
Australian who posts drunk quite a bit.
it's the same with anything, really, isn't it? It's the vocal minority are always the ones that get the most attention because they're the loudest.
Yeah, they spoil it for everyone. Screw them.
PC gamers are all elitists that only care about their specs and want everything to run at 120 frames per second, and they always hit the latest stuff. And yeah, there are some of them like that, and they're the ones that tend to be the most vocal because they're the ones who feel the need to justify the amount of money they've spent on their PC. I've had mine like 6 years. I've put a bit more RAM in it, a new graphics card, and it plays games.
We just recently launched the Steam version, so the Steam forum certainly does have a number of some people that are very upset that the game doesn't have it doesn't have an ultra mode like they're
Mm.
expecting to see.
Well, it's like I said, you
Good
are going to get some
times.
of them. I can understand the complaints to a certain extent. I'd like to have
Oh, sure.
more customization options and stuff, but I don't hate it just because they're not there. That for me, they're a bonus. It's like when I first started playing it, there were no customizable key bindings, which irked me a little bit because the defaults were a bit clunky. But you know,
Well, yeah.
I knew it was
The
coming
first
anyway. Plus, I understood something that most people didn't: early access. I understand what that means.
It didn't say it in big letters or anything. I didn't. We didn't write copy that said, "Hey, there's no key. There's no key." You know
It's
what?
not like
It doesn't matter.
it's not like you told everybody about it beforehand or anything. You just sort of advertised it as being a feature, and it wasn't really there. No, of course not.
I
Oh,
posted it on the website. Please don't buy it. It wasn't even subtle. I really posted on our website. You probably shouldn't buy it now.
I
It's
saw that.
early access. We're not joking.
I was looking through earlier, actually. Anyway, we really have got a bit off track there, so
But hey, now we're at least talking about the game.
it's very true. But before we get into the real meat and two veg of it, I'll tell us a bit more about Undead Labs. We already touched on that, but you know, how you formed, who makes you up,
Oh
kind of thing.
gosh. So I'm really Johnny come lately. I'm employee number 22. You know, I was very late to the game. The uh the a big core of the company's been together for years and years. Some of them met working at Blizzard. Our boss Jeff Strain. He got started working on as a designer on World of Warcraft. Actually, he was a programmer on regular flavor Warcraft, I think. I don't have his bio right in front of me, but I know that after specking out World of Warcraft, he and some folks split off and co-founded ArenaNet and made Guild Wars. And then they sold to NCSoft, and there was all that excitement and so on. And then split off again and formed Undead Labs with the idea of making not just our dream game, but a dream company, a place that understood the concept of work-life balance, a place that respected us, all the employees, as adult individuals, creative individuals. I mean, for example, I've worked at a number of major studios and tons of startups, and almost always the contract says that thou shalt not have a creative thought that does not belong to the company. If you, I mean, I won't name names, but there's one contract I had to sign that said literally, if I thought of anything that was related to any of the publisher's games, that thought belonged to the company. And if they could prove I had the thought while employed, they'd sue me to get it. And this was a company that makes everything from role-playing games to sports games to shooters. I mean, if
I
you
wonder
can
who
think
that
it,
was.
right. If you can think it. They have published a game on that topic now, and of course the lawyers try to pet you on the head and say, "Oh well, this wouldn't be enforced." But well, if it wouldn't be enforced, why is it in the contract?
Hmm.
The contract at Undead Labs, as a matter of fact, says none of that. You and I were talking about Pacific Rim before the
Yeah,
call
yeah,
started.
we were.
Our art director, Doug Williams, was a concept artist on Pacific Rim.
Oh, nice.
We're we're we are not just allowed, but we're encouraged to pursue our own creative side projects because the lab believes that creative people are better off if they're able to create. Like we can do better work for our employer if we're not supposed to. stifle that impulse every hour we're not at work, or better yet, spend every hour at work. We do go home on time. It's in, and don't even get me started about the fairness of the profit sharing and the compensation and the benefits. And no, it's just, it is absolutely a dream come true, and I'm gushing and I'm going to stop, but I can't believe it's real. I've been in the industry now for more than a decade. I've never worked any place like this. It's
Well,
incredible.
I
And the
have
team,
no. Sorry,
oh,
you go on.
yeah. No, 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 no. I was just going to say, and that kind of environment has attracted some of the best people I've ever worked with. Everyone on the team is just a joy. I am so lucky to be here. I'm going to stop now.
Well, I was just going to say I've noticed what you were saying there about the profit divide and things. Certain parts of different companies, um, they look. It's like certain parts just look down on other people. I've noticed one of the biggest ones that gets looked down on tends to be your job, community, because well, you're just there. You're just dealing with the community, and we not really all that important. And I'm sorry, but that's completely wrong. They need to stop. And oh, certain companies, I think
It's
this.
front facing.
Yeah,
Why crap on the
it's the
employee
most
that
important
does?
part in so
Oh
many
no.
ways.
I would never say that. I wouldn't.
Well, it's an
I mean,
integral part, certainly.
yes. The nice thing is that I'm part of the development team. I'm not an afterthought. I'm not marketing. I'm not, I'm really bound up in all of the things that go on. I'm not part of design, but no one wants me designing a game.
I don't know.
But
It could be interesting.
the guy, the people doing the design are often contact me to say, what do you think our players would think of such and such? And I can pull up examples of exactly what my players think of such and
That's the
such.
thing, isn't it? The people who do the community management side of thing, you're the ones out there. You're selling the company, and if people like the company, they like the product.
I wouldn't say that necessarily, but they'll give
Well,
the
they'll
company
give you
more
more time, give
slack.
you more slack. If you make a mistake and you're upfront about it, people there'll be someone that'll just hate you because some people just like that. But it reminds me of when I was in sales. They always told us there, realistically, you're not selling the product, you're selling yourself. If the person likes you, they'll buy what you're selling them because they like you, they trust you. So
I want our players to be able to trust me and Undead Labs through me. I mean, that's there they should, because, and that's the thing, everybody at the company I'm working with now, and I wish every community weenie was this lucky, but right now everyone at Undead Labs can be trusted. All of the designers, all of the developers have the best interests of the players at heart.
it
I
makes
mean,
a very nice change.
it is a nice change. Oh my
Just a
God.
certain company who I think you may have been talking about just a few moments ago seem to look at their customers as the enemy. How can we convince them to give us as much money as possible? And I can understand the principle from a business perspective. Business needs to make money. Great, I get that,
Yeah,
but
we're not rescuing orphan puppies. We are
yeah,
trying to make
but that
money.
doesn't mean you have to fleece your consumers. If you want to ideally get them into a place where they want to give you money rather than trying to drag it out of them.
Well, we were talking about, when you're talking about a massive online world, it's even more important because the world is something that is being created in part by the people that live there. Their interactions, what they bring to the table, I mean, we were talking about MMOs, and different servers have such a different vibe. And it's because the community is what creates the living part of the
That's
world.
why we have things like PvP servers and roleplay servers, because the people there are into that kind of thing.
I wish PvP and RP didn't get quite so separated out. Some of the most evil and wonderful role players I've ever met are hardcore PvP guys. But I know what you mean. The reason we separate it out is because the role play server people tend to be a lot more interested in the emotional arc, the development of storylines and so forth, and they don't want to be distracted by having to worry about their gameplay technique at the same time. It's difficult to be a top role player and a top PvPer at the same time. That's that is a that is a challenge right there. Oh, but I'm about to wander down another rabbit hole entirely.
There's just so many of them available.
There are. We're in a field riddled with rabbit warrens.
Well, we'll have to get there on time at least. So it gives me a great opportunity though, because I've been wondering the fact that you called Undead Labs. makes me think
Mm.
that the idea for State of Decay was there early on. Just a
Oh,
hunch.
oh
So,
goodness, yes.
where exactly did the idea come from? Was it just one of those things that, I mean, beyond the obvious, obviously zombies are popular right now, and so, but
We like
it's
to say that we liked zombies before zombies were cool.
it is definitely not your typical zombie game.
No, no, not at all. It's the original idea actually dates back to 2006. One of our artists went up to Jeff and pitched him. One of our artists and a couple other guys went up to Jeff and pitched him on the idea of more of an apocalypse simulating zombie game. With the emotional management and resource management and all that other stuff. Something that wasn't just a shooter or just an RPG. Uh, and the idea was like, wow, that's great. We can't do it right now, but let's think about that later. And then one thing led to another, and here we are. I mean, that was 2006. The company formed in 2009 with this game concept in mind. And I think the name of Undead Labs name again. I showed up very late to the party. I came on board June 2012. The I believe someone was walking along the street and saw a discarded light fixture and saw that the UL logo, the Underwriters Laboratory, and thought, the idea of a lab, where mad scientists bring crazy creations to life. I think that's where the name itself originated was some refuse on the street, which that's
Funny how that happens, isn't it?
yeah,
The Electric Six, they got the name of every single one of their songs on their first album from street signs they saw on one road when they were driving down the motorway.
that's fantastic. Inspirations everywhere.
Davey Bowie used to write his songs, cut them all into sentences, and then just shuffle them around until they ended up in an order he liked.
Really?
Mm.
Oh, I love him. His new album blew my mind. I was so glad when he started recording again. He said he'd stopped because he was happy. He had nothing to say.
It's fair enough. He's had a very long run. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, did they look at any other games for reference for ideas? I mean, they do
So
say that a good writer borrows and a great writer steals and makes better.
Robert Heinlein said, if you file off the serial numbers, you can sell anything again. Uh, in this case, no, not so much. Everybody, all the designers are enormous fans of the zombie genre in a very deep way. If there's a movie, they've seen it, and my better half collects zombie movies. We have thousands of DVDs here in the house. Not all zombie DVDs, but there's probably only hundreds of them, and he tried when he heard I got this interview. He was like, ask them if they've seen this. And every title I came up with, someone at the studio had seen it. And my husband's got some, obscure Czechoslovakian mood piece zombie movies. I mean, there's nothing, there's nothing real mainstream here, and yet they'd seen it all. And comic books, games, books, anything anything in the genre they've enjoyed. The game is loaded with Easter eggs. I mean, if you can see a sign or a placard or a flyer in State of Decay, it's almost certainly a reference to a movie or a book or a game. And there's definitely a lot of love and respect for the genre as a whole, but I wouldn't say that any game in particular inspired us. Remember, we did have the idea for the game before the zombie craze erupted.
2006 was about when it was just start. Well, you could say that it happened back in '96 with Resident Evil, but it went through a bit of a
Yeah,
lull after that.
it
It's only
it
within the
comes and
last 5 or 6 years
goes.
that it's really taken off.
Right. And so there weren't some of the games that, people have said, well, did you look at such and such? It's like, well, no, it wasn't out yet when we started designing this.
The
So
biggest ones in the industry at the moment that you'd look to, Left 4 Dead, DayZ, they're all, well, Left 4 Dead was what, 3 years ago now, four, something like that.
about the same time, I guess. But I mean, I just, not real. Sure, we play, it comes out, we play it. That's the other thing. Developers are just gamers that have cool jobs. We've played everything because of course you play everything. Why wouldn't you? You're a nerd with a game system.
But there are none in particular that gave
Oh,
any.
not
Fair
no,
enough.
not I.
I'm guessing it all came from other media then.
It mostly we're talking about movies and stories. You know, the idea of being able to tell your own story. What would you do? That's the real core of the game right there. Is you leave a zombie movie and you're joking around with your buddies, and then one of you says to the other, "What would happen if the apocalypse broke out right now?" And then you look and you're like patting your pockets and going, "Shit,
I
what
used
am
to
I
know a
gonna?"
guy actually. Every time he came around, I moved to a new house, he'd come in and say he'd give it a ranking of how zombie proof it was.
Yes.
He thinks this one is great because I live above a newsagent's and I'm upstairs. I could just board off the window, knock a hole through the wall, and there we go, loads of food available.
That's brilliant. Yeah, in my house, I'm doomed. We have one of those, it's all windows sort of things. So, our family plan, should the apocalypse break out, is to bolt to the top of the hill where a woman lives in a widow woman lives in a giant brick house with very narrow windows. We're completely taking over her house. We'll offer our services as protectors. That's it.
Makes
Protecting.
sense. I
But
did
no, that's
see a lot of hints, a lot of things that made me think of other films and stuff, and I haven't seen many. So um, the fact that the eyes kind of glow put me in mind of 28 Days Later, to be honest. Although they
that.
didn't glow in that, but they were still. So, are there any in particular any films, books, stuff like that that have actually had a direct impact, or was it more just little bits and pieces that came up along the
It
way?
really it really is. I mean, is gestalt an appropriate word to use here? I don't know. It really is. You know, the guys immersed themselves in a genre they loved, and then came out and then started dreaming. I mean, so yeah, there's certainly going to be bits and pieces, but nothing. There's no one influence that I can point to as dominant. Of course, that is Pittsburgh, very end of the game.
That does make a lot of sense. It does feel there are a lot of things that what you said actually about telling your own story. That was one of the things I commented on. Is the narrative that's in there is very very deep, but it's also very unassuming. It's kind of in the background. It's there if you want it, and
Right.
doesn't get in the way if you don't. I also the fact that when it started, you just there. None of this pretentious preamble that you get in most things. It didn't set up anything. It'll be just there. You're a guy with a piece of wood in your hand, and there are these dudes trying to bite your mate's face. What do you do? It's like
Exactly.
it was like a choose your own adventure. The first page is this guy's eating your mate's face. What are you going to go and do? Oh, well, I'm going to hit him over the head, obviously.
Yeah. It's funny when we did the very first media day, we sat people down in front of the game, and we were as nervous as a bunch of cats in a room full of rocking chairs. We were because no one had played it before. I mean, testers clearly, but no one outside the family, as it were. And so we're biting our nails and we're watching people play, and some of the reporters who had quite a lot of experience reviewing games, breaking them down into their components, analyzing them for theme and structure and all that stuff, they really struggled. They could not, like, they kept getting bogged down in the interface, which, has its issues, don't get me wrong, but they couldn't figure out where to go because they were thinking too much. Whereas one of the guys in the room was actually, he was really more of a player. He had a website, but he was mostly there because he was local and he had a website. What the hell? Why not? I have a very all in policy towards media, and so he was there and he was just playing it as a player. He's like, oh, here I am with a tree branch in my hand and my friend's being attacked. Whack! you know,
Exactly.
he did. He did not stop to analyze it at all. He just tried to react. Well, what would I do in this situation? And he just tore through the game. And this was not the most. This was the earliest iteration of it. It had some flaws, but he ran into no trouble at all. Everyone thinking about it really kept hitting walls. We've patched a lot of that out, obviously,
I've
but
noticed that with it's a bit of a trend in recent games. It's the complaint people often come up with about a game being linear. What they mean
mm,
by being linear isn't necessarily a bad thing. 'Cause I've played several games that lead you by the nose, but they know
mhm.
exactly what they're doing. Where some they're just trying to railroad you into something, and a lot of people have gotten used to that. As much as they complain
Yeah.
about it, they've gotten used to it. It's why we have your big exclamation points above important things, and it's like, oh, there's something over there. Camera zooms in on it, talk about it, and then it comes back out, and as you start to walk, the guy's like, maybe I should go over there and see what that was. People expect that kind of thing. So finding a game where you just gives you, here's the world, go play. Some people just can't get their head around it.
That's why there is a storyline in the game because we were like, well, the original idea of just a total free for all. We were like, actually, people will just get stuck at the ranger station and never move.
Isn't it
There's,
ironic that after it was released, that's what everybody started saying you should have done in the first place anyway?
yeah,
Damned if you
well,
do and damned if you don't.
pretty much. I think we hit a good balance. I mean, it is unapologetically not for everyone. It's not that kind of game. We never meant it to be. We were stunned that it's had the reception it's had. I mean, everyone's been so wonderful. There's been so much positive coverage. People have been saying how excited they are to see a game like this. I mean, we really didn't we were hoping, but actually I'm not even sure we were hoping as I don't think we dared to hope for the reception we had. I think that's a good way to put it. We were delighted, but it was never expected. Not a persistent world sandbox with permadeath, for heaven's sake.
Well, it's very. Be surprised how many people are into that kind of thing. They just kind of don't realize they are.
That's the thing. Once you had to try it, you had to try it to find out you liked it.
It's one of
And
those
then
things that grows on you.
well, the persistent world aspect, for example, the offline, the world keeps turning even when you're not there. People see that and they flip. They're like, "No, I want to be able to turn that off." And it's like, "No, no, no, you got to try it." And then when they actually try it, they're still like, "Uh, I signed off and then I came on this morning and all this stuff happened. Ah, I got to be able to turn it off." And it's like, "Well, be gone for a whole week and you'll see that we have actually programmed in a very sharp drop off between 2 days and 3 days off."
Actually, didn't know anything about that the first time I played it. So I played it a
Oh
couple of
no.
times. I didn't notice. Then I went away for just over a week. I thought,
Oh
and
no.
then somebody told me about it. I was like, oh god, I dreaded turning it on, and then I turned it back on. Everybody was happy. All my cupboards were full. I had loads of ammo. Everybody in the local area loved me. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this more often.
You'll have to go AFK more often and let the game play itself. It continues on the line you set. You must have left things in good shape with emotionally secure people. If you didn't, you would have come back to ruin and despair.
It seems that way. I did put a bit of effort into it. I'd cleared a few, just cleared a few infestations just before I left, and a couple of hordes. So,
Yeah, yeah. You left things in good shape, so
granted,
that's
that
why.
was in the campaign though, not on Breakdown.
But the progression's the same in Breakdown. I mean, if you leave things in good shape, you come back and they're in good shape. They're not. It's
That's
we're
probably
we
where all the problems I was having was because I noticed there was an achievement for getting five infestations in one day. So when I left, there were three of them surrounding my home base. When I came back, there were four, and everybody was depressed, and several people had gone missing. Turned out one of them was across the road the entire time. She maybe she tried to run away, and then she just reached the house across the road. Thought, "Sorry, I'm just going to stay here," and just crouched down in a corner. I found her 2 days later, just blabbering in a corner.
she'd gone fetal. Poor thing. Yeah, the AI is astonishingly sophisticated for an XBLA game. It's actually astonishingly sophisticated in general, but it's even more insane for an XBLA game. But at the same time, there are limits. They sometimes your survivors are just not that bright. They they're they just aren't.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It makes them feel more organic, more like real people. They make stupid decisions sometimes.
Most people are pretty. Most people don't react well under
Yeah.
stress.
We,
That
we, we
this is.
got often watch films and things like that, and we say, "Oh, I do this in that situation." How do you know you're not there when you're actually stuck in the middle of something? Everything
Hmm.
goes out of the window, and you just sort of derp.
They say civilization is 3 days away from food, 3 days away from chaos if the grocery store truck stopped running. I mean, I was reading an article about 3 days is how long you've got before people really start, knifing each other over the last pound of butter.
Well, I remember a few years ago we had a really hot summer, and the electricity went out in my area. It was out for about 4 hours. Everybody went bananas. They didn't know how to handle it. 4 hours. Do you know what I did?
What'd you do?
Put some candles on. And
Yeah.
told my kid a bedtime story because it happened at like 7 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah. Yep. Bedtime. Just go to bed. It'll probably be on in the morning, and if it's not, the sun will be up.
I mean, she got a bit freaked out when it first happened because the lights went out and literally we heard everybody in there going oh all at once, and it was
That was more unnerving than anything
yeah.
else.
So it upset her a little bit. She was only 3 at the time though, so but
Yeah.
we just put some candles on, had something to eat. luckily enough, we'd had the food in the oven long enough for it to mostly cook, so we just left it to whilst the oven cooled down.
The residual heat did it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you kept your head, so you could survive an apocalypse.
I like to think so.
You probably cut someone who messed with your kid, though.
Well, yeah, that's a parent thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned the AI and stuff, and for being an XBLA game, was it always planned to go to the PC, or was that more in response to people saying this should be on the PC?
No, it was actually somewhere in the middle. It was intended to be an XBLA game. That was the plan, was making a console game, and we actually thought that a PC port would be, really impossible. And then we actually sat down and looked at it, and we're like, oh,
Well, the fact
okay,
that you're
it's
going
not.
from the Xbox makes a lot of sense because it's basically Windows Lite, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
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 very
it's
similar in a lot of ways.
it's a computer that you don't have to do any tech support troubleshooting on. It either works or it doesn't work. There's no nonsense about drivers or video cards or memory or
It's
there's none
the
of that.
feel of the consoles, isn't it? And I get that.
Oh,
It's
oh, it's
the sit down,
marvelous.
but then again, even consoles now have their issues. I've known games needed patches to get them running, but still, generally speaking, you put your game in, you press play, and it works.
Yeah, it's really like we don't have a tech support team. We have two QA guys. We have me mightily pitching in, even though I don't understand 90% of what's crossing my desk. And we have the two guys that did the programming on the PC version, and that's it. Whenever a player says this thing crashes, I I I get their DXDAG and I look at it and I say, well, here's your problem right here. After looking at 500 of them, I can start saying, this much memory, you need to go look at the system requirements. And that's the ones I pray for because I can solve that one. But the ones that have clearly sufficient memory and an excellent video card and there's no problems that have popped up under, the problems header, a stunning number of people will send me their DXDAGs with problems. Like it says there is a problem with such and such. And I'm like, I just hand it back and go, you have to fix that first before I can help you. But then I get the ones that it should run. Everything seems fine, and then I pass it to QA, and they look at it, and sometimes they come back with, "Well, the drivers aren't. Those are beta drivers. He should not use those. Use real ones. The ones with the certification
I'm
button
a
on them."
bugger
Or
for using beta drivers for my graphics
oh,
cards.
see, one of the video card companies actually put out a driver just for our game. It was wonderful, but at the same time, we're like, we haven't tested this at all. We have no idea. So the players are going, oh, well, this is for your game. And we're like, we know, but we haven't tried it.
I
They're,
actually, you
they're
saying that, I
telling
noticed
us.
one of the news posts you gave is that it's available on Steam. Go get it. We want to test it. Test
Yeah,
it for us.
that was the thing about early access. I'm like, well, don't. If you don't mind, we'd love to know because we could only test like 50 different combinations here in house, not the thousands you have. And
A lot of
we
people miss that fact that when problems do come up with a game that's balanced, it's like this should have been fixed. It's like, yeah, but realistically, how much can you do? I mean, yeah, okay, you want to make it run as well as possible, but you can't realistically go out and buy 6,000 computers and test it on all of them just in case that one guy with that one weird configuration has that one problem.
Well, that one guy in early access usually equals a couple hundred guys
True,
in one
but
place. So I love that guy in early access who goes, okay, so here's exactly we've got some stuff written up on our forum when the forums come back. We have some stuff written up on the forums telling people how we need you to what you need to try first. It's shocking how often rebooting will fix your problem. It's
that's
it's
yeah. We have a TV show over here called the IT Crowd,
oh dear.
which is about people in an IT unit. And the guy got to the point where he was so sick of dealing with the complaints he got, and he just set up a tape recorder to say, "Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?"
That's going to be the next crossover hit. I can already tell. If there aren't already hundreds of Americans watching that bootleg
I
on
know
the
there are some.
Undead.
It's been going for quite a few years now. I know some people have come across it. It's actually. Have you
Yeah.
ever heard of Father Ted?
No.
No, it was about a priest on an Irish priest on a place called Craggy Island. It's the same guy who wrote that, so it's very it's very Irish. The main character in the IT crowd is an Irishman. It has a very British sense of humor about it. But it's the point is that the most common solution for a problem with a PC is to turn it off.
Yeah,
Maybe your resource cache is maxed out or something. I don't know. I'm not all that au fait with
yeah.
PCs myself. I know that's my first solution. I'll turn it off. Maybe it's
Turn it
overheated.
off, turn it on.
Hmm.
Sometimes running file verification's the next one. I had one, and this one, I just died laughing. I literally could not control myself for about 15 minutes. I was laughing so hard. This one fellow was like, the game doesn't do. It was like it doesn't auto save. And I don't quite remember. This was 3 or 4 weeks ago, but it was something major. It was something that I saw it and I panicked. I was like, oh no, rally the troops. This is going to end in tears, probably mine. What are we going to do? Because it wasn't doing something huge. And the other players on Steam were trying to help him troubleshoot. And they said, well, run file verification. And he said, I can't. I torrented it. And I was just like, wait, what?
Oh,
It was a pirate copy.
that reminds me of what was it? Game Dev Tycoon. Did you hear what happened with them?
Yes,
They
when they put
released
in
it, yeah,
they put in the pirate version where
and
the
then
people
people are
were like,
coming complaining about it.
it doesn't work when people are pirating my game and I can't win. Yes, that is right. You're miss.
The
Oh
bit
wow.
that gets me is the how brazen some people can be about it.
Oh yeah, he was screaming about how no one should buy this game, and he knew because his stolen copy didn't work. I, I just, it was laugh or cry, and I chose to laugh. It was
Speaking of
hilarious.
verifying the cache, though, when I first got Breakdown, at
Mm,
first I thought it was unlocked. After I'd finished the main campaign, it wasn't
sure.
until I went and I watched somebody else's video and I saw that they had the two logos. I was like, I'm not getting that. So the first thing I did was verify the cache, which Steam assured me everything was fine. But I
Sure,
loaded
sure.
it up after that and it worked. So obviously everything wasn't fine.
There's a file that I had to delete to get it to work. I mean, Steam said everything's fine, and then I said something to one of my colleagues, and they were like, "Oh, delete this thingy," and I was like, "Oh, okay." It was like app cache or something in your Steam folder, and if it sometimes that's what it takes.
Just back to what we were saying earlier. Consoles they're much more straightforward. PC requires a little coaxing from time
I
to time.
think I think the issue there, and this is just a guess, but it depends on how long it's been since you patched the original game. If it had been a while, you were almost certainly going to have to delete that little app cache folder. And I don't play my Steam handle that's Undead Sanya. I don't play under that handle. I don't no one needs to know which games I pour the most hours into. My sins are my own to suffer the shame of, not to be shared. So I don't actually play under Undead Sanya, but I do patch with it so that I can make sure that I'm getting the same experience that my customers are going to be getting. I don't. It would be cheating to just test with the developer version. So I do patch as a civilian, and it was just I get teased on that on the forums plenty of times. The guys will be like, you've got 2 minutes played on it." It's like, no, I've got more than that, but not on this handle.
Not as many as me though. 1,543 hours in the last 2 weeks.
I was impressed. More
I was
hours than
impressed.
there are in a week.
It's like 4 times as many hours as there exist in a fortnight.
Right.
Sometimes bugs can be fun.
They are. But that one wasn't ours.
No, unfortunately, still, it's quite the compliment there that I put that many hours in. I like to look at it that way.
Yes. I
Um,
am I am
I'll be
gratified that
expecting my check in the mail for that one.
listen, I got YouTubers who've been who've made dozens of gameplay videos. Yeah, you'll be on the list for a check, but I've got some guys on YouTube who are probably a little ahead of you in line.
Now, nobody watches my videos. I have like 6 views. Sad face.
Poor sad face.
No. I just do that as a hobby anyway, so shame myself plug, go check out my videos. Speaking of PC stuff though, we were talking earlier about got some complaints that they don't have like depth of field and shaders and so on and so forth options. It's just a sliding scale of horrible to great, for lack of a better term. Are there any plans to actually add more customization at a later date, like anti-aliasing things like that?
I worry about saying plans because that makes it sound like,
Potential
it,
for them to be added then.
so right before we launched out of early access into regular, I don't know, what do you call it? Not early access.
General
Right after
release.
Right, right. Thank you. Right before general release, I put up something saying, "What's the one thing you don't think we should launch without?" And I probably should have phrased it a little differently because, that certainly opened the floodgates for people to be disappointed when we didn't launch with that stuff. But what I want was trying to acquire was a list of the top priorities. I mean, what is it we really got to have, or there will be blood? And, by far and away, head and shoulders above everything else was key mapping. And there was a certain amount internally of, see, told you.
It's amazing how important customizable key bindings are to people, even if they never use them.
Oh,
It's the
oh
thing
no,
about
some of
PC
us.
gamers. We insist on having the option, even if we never use it, even if we hate that option, it has to be there because it has to be optional.
Oh, see,
Personally,
I
I always
am
have custom key bindings, but
I am a PC gamer and I have to remap whatever game I'm playing to the first game I learned to play. I
I don't
have
do
to.
it to that. I have my own one, but it's just something about me. I hate WASD. It's just the idea of
Yeah,
using my little finger on control. So I move everything across one, ESDF, and have A for sprint. It just seems so much more intuitive to me. It gives me the
yeah.
whole left hand side of the keyboard with one hand.
I wish my logic was that good. I literally imprinted on my first PC game like a baby duck, and I can't. My fingers can't. I cannot do WASD. I can't. I try because I'm told that once I learn it, it'll be so intuitive. But I'm always whacking like the control button, and I can't move like that. I just can't. So no, yeah, yeah, there were a lot of us that knew keybind, and that was the worst of it is we had been working on key binding for ages. We had hoped to get it in before we went into general release, but it just didn't work out that way. And we couldn't delay the general release any longer for other reasons. So we just were like, it's going to be the first patch.
Well,
It
it
will be
came, it was like a week later or something like that.
a week. It was a week later. We got it in a week later. But it had been, I mean, it was almost done the day we went into general release. That was the killer. Like we're seeing people going, "Why is there no key mapping?" And we're like, we know. We want it too. But Chris just he was the programmer that did most of the work. He just killed himself trying to do it. It was just one guy, and he got hired pretty late in the process. The port was more than half done before he was even hired. We're a very small team. People seem to think that money people think money goes straight from their wallets to our pockets, and it doesn't. There's months of delay in between. So
And
we
even
couldn't
then,
make.
I mean, people know that when you buy a console game, it's like £10, £12 or $15, however much it is, goes to the console manufacturer for the licensing and stuff. People seem to forget that you still get that on the PC as well. Maybe not as much, but if you're selling it through Steam, Steam need to take their cut. They need to make their money so they can keep going.
Steam gets a cut, the publisher gets a cut, and if there's any development costs still outstanding and unpaid, that gets paid before the developer gets any. We couldn't just go out and I mean, people saw we had an enormous hit on our hands, and we were thrilled, but that didn't mean we had the money.
I mean, even then, even if it is going straight to you, it's not going straight to you that day because
Yeah,
there are all the legal ramifications involved. It has to be screened and everything. I don't know.
publishers.
I'm not. I don't deal with money laundering, so I
There's
don't know.
the publishers do the accounting, and then there's an internal audit before they write a check. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. But it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the game has to stand and fall on its own. At the end of the day, the only thing we can't. I mean, what you were saying earlier, if they know us and trust us, they're willing to give us some slack. But
Exactly.
and I appreciate the living dead out of that is the fact that people are willing to ride with us. I mean that means so much from just the standpoint of trying to build a long-term community. That's so incredibly wonderful, and we thank people and we appreciate it. But we also know that most people will never know that we exist at all. The game has to stand and fall on its own. So we have a responsibility to do the best we can and to keep improving it and to never stop. So we know that. It's just, some days you just gotta keep putting one foot in front of the other until you get where you're going.
Yeah, it's shocking how quickly you can lose sight of that kind of thing. Like that we lost sight of the original question I asked. Are there any other PC specific features that we have a
Oh,
chance of
goodness
seeing at a
gracious.
later date?
Yes.
PC gamers are notorious for wanting anti-aliasing.
So
I
that
honestly don't
that's
understand why, but
I don't quite either, but
they
that's okay.
they go mental over it.
I am a PC gamer and I don't quite get it, but that's where I got off track. That spreadsheet I made of the one thing stuff
Mm.
that
I
listed
can imagine
priority
that
thing.
was fairly high up on the list.
There was a lot of stuff on the list, and I know our programmers are trying to figure out what can reasonably be done with the resources we have. And we're going to keep patching it. We're going to keep improving it. We're not going to stop, but I can't get specific because I don't have the programmers here in the room with me to tell me what the results of their latest conversations about feasibility are. I should have asked them before I sat down to record with you, honestly, but
But
I
they
didn't.
may not be sure yet anyway. I think that what we take away from this is yes, maybe, possibly, perhaps.
We
There's
know
more stuff coming, shall we say.
we know what people want and we would like to give it to them. How about that?
What about other more generalized things like another map, uh, customizable characters, things like that?
So customizable characters almost certainly no, because of the way the AI works and the way the customization. Because in the game you're not a character, you're a community. So the game's been balanced so that if you want more, say, melee strength, you don't customize a character. You rescue a survivor with top melee skills, or you train
Spend
that
time
one
working with them,
survivor.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the concept of the game. Customization is almost certainly not going to happen in Class 4. I mean, I never say never because you never know what wild hair gets up somebody's butt, but in this case, I don't see it. Now, maps and stuff with our game, a map with the way with our base system works, a map can't just be generated. You can't just crap it out. It is weeks, months if it's just one person working on it of painstaking. There was no chance we could get the first DLC out with a new map anytime quickly. So that said, we are talking about the next DLC and what
I
all is going to
spotted
be in
that
it.
when I was looking earlier. Is that one
And
of the things that's hoped for inclusion? New location?
I hope to be able to talk about what is in the feature set after the first of the year. But we'll see. We got to see how much gets built first.
Sounds intriguingly vague.
Yes, yes,
So
intentionally so.
you're going to have to leave soon, so we best get wrapping up then. Can you give us a
Right.
very brief idea of what the future plans are for Undead Labs? You
Well,
mentioned that
that's
there's another game on its way and the DLC, obviously. Can you tell us
well,
anything about the game?
I can't really talk about another game. It's no secret that Class 4, the code name of State of Decay was Class 3. It's a Max Brooks joke. The the Class 4 were the global outbreak and whatnot. That's always been the code name for the massive online world. That was always the dream. State of Decay actually grew out of that dream. We were talking about, maybe we should do a little proof of concept for some of these crazy things before we risk hundreds of millions of dollars. And then we were like, wait, we don't want to do some crappy little demo. Let's make it its own awesome game. And that's how State of Decay came to be. So Class 4's never been a secret. Uh, and all I can really say about it is that discussions with the publisher are ongoing. I, again, have something to say about that very, very soon.
It's State of Decay Plus.
It'll be the same world for sure, and the same systems, but with lots and
Just
lots and
bigger.
lots of people. No, no, not just bigger. I mean,
Well,
this
I
is
don't
the
mean
multi
it only. I mean, it's just it'll be that, but you're going to turn
huge.
everything up to 11.
Yeah, we hope so. I think this would be the most amazing guild game in the history of mankind. I mean, you and your friends like taking over the Quickie Mart and fighting off those
I
jerk
do
offs
know
who.
that's the one thing that a lot of people have asked for with State of Decay is some kind of co-op or multiplayer experience.
Oh, do you know the sad story about that though? We posted in July that it wasn't happening. The game feels like a co-op multiplayer game because it was. That was the intent from the
But it
beginning
still
was a
kind of
co-op.
is. It's just they're all AI, which has its own advantages because
It
there are a lot of the
does.
games out there that you need your co-op to make it work. State of Decay stands on its own without it. It'd be nice
Right.
as an option, but
We had
sometimes
meant
it's
it
not
to have
feasible.
it, but the engine we couldn't do it with the engine. So we were like, okay, well, after launch, maybe we can talk about that for our first DLC. That'd be great, yeah. And then we really looked into it and we found out, oh my God, it would take 6 to 9 months at best. And that only if we didn't do any patches, any DLC, any new features. I mean, it would have been 6 to 9 months at the cost of everything else. So we made the call that the best thing for the game was to just bite our lips and say no, it's not going to happen
It's
in State of Decay.
unfortunate, but it stands perfectly fine as it is. One last thing then before you leave.
Shoot!
What happened with the pony comment?
Oh, the pony. Have you heard the new joke pony line in Breakdown? We
Not
had
yet.
the we had the actress come back to the studio and re-record some lines just for Easter eggs, to be funny. We made a joke about the pony. It's in there. I don't know how often it triggers, but it's
I can't say
definitely
I've
there.
come across that. Why was it removed though?
What do you mean?
Well, the first one, I was told it
Oh,
was removed.
it wasn't removed. We just toned it down. It was
Oh,
triggering every couple of seconds. I mean, it was
so
you
I
you
haven't
had
run across it at all yet, and I've like more than 30 hours in there.
oh really?
Hmm.
Well, if
I
it's
was told it
gone,
had been pulled out.
I I'm gonna have to ask about that because I don't it wasn't supposed to be pulled out. It was supposed to be toned down so that it wasn't triggering 100% of the time. And it was getting kind of rage. Like if I hear that again, I'm throwing my controller.
Well, the one I keep getting is, what did you get me? Oh, stuff. That seems to be the only one that ever triggers for me. Although one of the random conversations is like everybody I pick up seems to tell me that story about Biker Steve. It's
Oh
like
God.
that street that he lived on must have been enormous because everybody lived there.
Okay, some of that is supposed to be a bit of a joke because in a small town everybody knows everybody. But some of that might be something wonky with the frequency index. I don't know. I'm going to hang up and I'm going to go ask the QA guy to
Well,
check to see if
it's a
there's
funny
something else.
conversation at least. It actually put me in mind of a Japanese zombie film called Tokyo Zombie. There's a guy in that who's known as the famous unbeatable zombie. It turns out that he was actually a human who just thought he was bitten by a zombie that had false teeth. So he's been out living with the zombies, and every time they try to bite him, he slaps them over the head and tells them, "No, I'm one of you. Remember?"
Oh my goodness, I wish I'd known that. I could have made a comment about, no, it's an homage. No, I wouldn't have actually.
It's a great film.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds brilliant.
It is very, very funny. But I think you're going to have
Yeah,
to get off.
I'm.
So we just about managed to cram everything in, I think.
Oh, good. I'm happy to come back or do a Q&A follow-up in email, either one.
It was very nice chatting with you. Anyway, we have a lot of very interesting things to cover.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. It's been a wonderful experience. Very interesting one.
It certainly was wide-ranging in addition to
Mm.
being
Oh, I know.
wonderful.
Like you said earlier, we have the worst job in the world, don't we?
It's terrible. I hate it. Hate every minute of it.
Oh, whatever would I do?
Oh, cry myself to sleep is what I'm going to do. Actually, now I'm going to hang up and go talk about talk indexes with our QA guy.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time, and we do look forward to what's coming next. It is a
Thanks again.
fantastic game.
Thank you.
It really is. I put 1,500 hours into it in the last 2 weeks.
You're magical.
It's a talent. Well, thank you for joining us, and to everybody else, thank you for listening.